What's going on, guys? Thank you for tuning in to Rules for Rebels, and today I wanted to talk about a topic or a question that I see coming up a lot, which is, what's the best job for an entrepreneur? Now, it's kind of funny. I was talking to a buddy about this the other day, and he kind of said, isn't that kind of an oxymoron? He said, a job for an entrepreneur, doesn't an entrepreneur, own or run their own business? And well, yeah, that's what an entrepreneur is, but not everybody, actually probably not most people, hit the ground running doing entrepreneurship full-time from day one, right? Like, most people have to work up to it. I know that was my experience. I've always been what I would consider entrepreneurial, but I'd never really had my own business or anything like that until quite a few years down the road. And even my main business, which I have going on today, it started out part-time. I was working a full-time job. My business partner was working a full-time job, and I think we both worked full-time jobs for about the first 3 years of our business. And it wasn't until we were 3 years in that we both wound up leaving our jobs. He left first a few months before me, and then I followed shortly after him. But most people are not going to start out as full-time entrepreneurs from day one, and I think that's actually kind of smart. I see a lot of times in kind of the entrepreneur communities and things like that, a lot of people act almost as if you get some kind of merit badge for going all in, oh, I quit my job and I'm all in on entrepreneurship. And for me personally, man, my business was 3 years old. It was pretty established. It was bringing in probably 3 to 6 times what my yearly salary was at my job before I actually left. Now, I probably could have left sooner. I'm kind of I don't want to say I'm risk averse, but I definitely kind of like security, and I like the idea that I had a full-time paycheck coming in and benefits and things like that I didn't have to pay for out of my own pocket. And in some sense, kind of my attitude was, if I can have a full-time job and run the business on the side, why give up one stream of income? I wasn't making a ton of money at my job. I was probably making, I don't know, $27,000 a year or something like that. But, nonetheless, that's $27,000 a year extra, plus benefits probably account to another $10,000 to $15,000 a year. So it's if I can manage to run both of them, why leave the job? However, at some point there does become an opportunity cost where the business starts growing, and it's I could probably make a lot more money and take this a lot further if I did lose my day job. Or if I did quit my day job. So in today's video, I kind of wanted to break down what's the perfect job for an entrepreneur into kind of 3 different categories or 3 different reasons that you might try to get these jobs. So the first one is working for a startup. One of my first jobs out of college, I got, I was paid. I guess you could kind of call it an internship / contract position with a company in Chicago in the River North neighborhood. Basically what we did analytics for ad buyers and media companies. So for example, Kung Fu Panda was big back then. So when a Kung Fu Panda movie came out and an advertising agency wanted to buy 10 million impressions on the Chicago Tribune, we kind of filled the space in the middle, right? We weren't a publisher and we weren't an advertiser. We were in the middle in between them. And if somebody bought 10 million Kung Fu Panda ads, it was my job to basically pull reports every day and track and make sure that these ads were being evenly distributed. So a lot of times what Chicago Tribune may do, you bought 10 million ads, we're going to blow your 10 million ads out in 1 week, and the same people are going to see the ads hundreds of times, as opposed to spreading it out over 3 months or 6 months or whatever else. So it was my job to pull reports and kind of make sure that the campaigns were being delivered evenly over time. Now, the company I worked for was a startup. I think when I started, it was under 50 employees. They've grown really large. They bought a bunch of media companies. At one point, they almost went public. But when I started, it was very small. And the cool thing about startups, in addition to being a really kind of awesome atmosphere, it's a lot of young people, no dress code, just not very corporate, very laid back, very fun atmosphere to work in. But one of the cool things about working at a startup is you kind of see how the sausage is made, so to speak. So if you're working at some big corporate company or some big corporate job, typically everything is very segmented. So if you work in accounting, you're not working on the entire accounting department. You have one specific job, your accounts receivables, or you're in charge of paying vendors, or you're in charge of this. If you're in account management, you're in charge of one thing and you kind of stay in your lane. At a startup, you have your hands in everything, because there's less employees, because they have to be a little bit more ninja-like in terms of you know, working with smaller budgets, working with less people, a lot of times you have your hands in a little bit of everything. So even though technically I was working in analytics, I did some account management stuff. At times they'd send me up to the third floor, and I'd go work with the accounting department, helping them out with stuff. You know, I was involved with stuff directly with the CEO. The CEO was like 30 years old. He was balling. He was like 30 years old. I remember he took us all down to Orlando on a big trip. We were meeting with the venture capital company that brought like Match.com and eHarmony public, and the guy was buying out VIP sections at clubs, and it was just out of control. We actually wound up getting kicked out of our hotel, but really fun atmosphere to work in. But the most important thing, why it would be a good job for an entrepreneur, you see like the inner workings of a startup, and you have your hands in every piece of it. So, you know, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur and starting a company, working for a startup is a great way to kind of see how businesses run, see how startups run, and kind of get your hands dirty and get into a lot of different things. So that would be the one type of job that an entrepreneur may want to get. The second one is get some job that's going to help you acquire a skill. So one thing I think too many entrepreneurs lack is a specific skill, and I'll admit that I fall into this category. So criticism you'll hear a lot of people say is like, if you want to start a technology company, you should probably have some background or some knowledge in like coding or programming, right? If you want to start like a media company, you should probably maybe know a little bit about like video production and graphic design. You know, if you want to start some type of service business, you should probably know a little bit of something about that service. I think too many entrepreneurs these days don't really have any concrete skills or aren't really experts in any area. And they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm a people person, and I know how to bring people together, and I know how to make things happen. And not saying that's not a valuable skill, it is, but if that's your only skill, you know, it's not going to get you too far. So what I mean by that is if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, I would suggest you learn some skill. It really doesn't matter what it is. Learn something. Learn graphic design, learn copywriting, learn sales, learn marketing, learn a little bit of coding or programming, learn a little bit of graphic design, learn a little bit of video production. All of these skills are going to help you in entrepreneurship and in being an entrepreneur. I'll give you guys an example. I have a buddy who's in the process of building an app. It's been going on for several months. He's also rolling out a token or a coin, a cryptocurrency essentially, that's going to go along with this app. Now, the kid has no background whatsoever in coding or programming, so what winds up happening, he hires a programmer to build the app for him, or a developer, whatever you want to call it, and the guy's kind of, you know, string him along, and he keeps paying him money and keeps paying him money. And what happened with the first developer, he has like the graphics, right? He kind of like, he has screenshots of what different screens are going to look like, but these guys have not built any of the bones or any of the brains that are actually going to make this app function, which in a sense is kind of the most important part. I mean, I could go into Canva and make a bunch of screenshots right now, but that's not going to make an app function. And so then he hired another developer, and the second developer told him, hey, all these guys did was do like the design part of it. Like, they haven't built any of the brains behind like actually making this app function, letting people message each other, letting people post things for sale, etc. So then he hires a second developer, gives them $7,000. Turns out they're stringing him along as well. Winds up having to go to a third developer. At the same time, he's trying to roll out a cryptocurrency. Doesn't really know how to do that himself. Hires a guy to write an Ethereum ERC20 contract token for him. Those guys kind of string him along. You know, so whatever industry you're going to be in, it would be helpful to have some type of skill, even if you're not an expert developer, programmer, coder, etc. At least know enough to where when you're hiring people, you know if they're competent to get the job done or not. But yeah, that's one thing I hear criticism of a lot of, you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are people, or who can bring people together. And really, you should try to start focusing on and developing some specific skill. And I wish that's something that's probably something, you know, I say I wish, it's something that I should drill down on and focus on now. But one thing with me personally, you know, I know a little bit about everything, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert in anything. You know, it's kind of the whole argument of focus and going an inch deep and a mile wide versus going a mile deep and an inch wide, and really kind of digging into one subject area. So I'm a little bit more spread out. You know, I know a little bit about everything, but I'm not an expert in anything, which I think that's not really the way to be. So learn from my mistakes. pick one specific skill to focus on or to learn or to become an expert and knowledgeable about and focus on that. So that would be the second one. So the first one, get a job with a startup. Second one, get some job that's going to help you acquire some skill. Before we move on to the next one. So Little Dicky, for example, I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a rapper. He's kind of like a Weird Al Yankovic style, like parody rapper, but he also, he can actually flow. He actually raps really well. I've seen him in concert. Really funny guy, really good stage presence. He can actually rap. And how he actually got his start, I believe he used to work for NBC, I want to say it was, and he worked in kind of the media or video production department, and he used to put together like the commercials for him. I think he actually wrote one of the jingles for like the NBA Finals a couple years ago. And he actually took all these skills that he learned in like creating viral videos and viral content, and he took those skills that he learned at his job and brought them over into making these like funny raps and turning them into videos. And he has like funny little like stories to go along with his videos and stuff like that. And there's an example of somebody who got a job, learned a skill at the job, and then brought that skill over to kind of help benefit themselves. So if I were to go get a job today, I would probably try to go get a job at like some type of like media agency, and I would want to try to work in like the content production, whether it be blogging, video creation, making memes. Like that's an area that I would really want to go work for somebody and work under people who are actually doing this and experiencing this, and that's a skill that I would really want to learn. I think that would go a long way in any business that you were to get started in. So again, first, work for a startup. Second, get a job with a company that can teach you some skill. If you want to start your own house cleaning company, go get a job, cleaning houses with a company. See what their processes and things are like, and then take that and use it to start your own company. And then lastly, the third type of job that an entrepreneur should get is, I don't know what word I want to use to phrase this, but I almost want to say kind of a blow-off job. So what does that mean, kind of a blow-off job? Well, I will say that I think it's harder to start a new business if you're working a demanding career. So, I think there's a difference between jobs and careers, right? Like a job, you show up 9 to 5, you do your job, you get your paycheck. A quote-unquote career, more something, it might be something salaried, might be something where some days you have to stay late, might be something where you have to travel for the job, might be something where you're having to take work home from you. I think a career is much more demanding than a job, and I also think with a career or a more serious job, a lot of times within your work contract, it will actually say you're not allowed to work another job or you're not allowed to start a business, because they want your complete focus to be on what you're doing for them. So I guess what I mean by this, I got a couple buddies who are accountants. Like, it would be very hard for them to start a side hustle or whatever because their job is so demanding. However, if I have another buddy that works at a movie theater or valets cars or does something that's like not as demanding, like when they leave their 9 to 5 job, or maybe it's not even a 9 to 5, maybe it's an overnight or a second shift or whatever else, but like if it's more of a job than a career, when you leave, typically your time is yours. There's no overtime. You're not going to be made to take work home with you. You're not going to have to prepare for a meeting the next day, and that's going to allow you to really focus on your business. And that's kind of what I did, not really as a plan. It was kind of like, long story short, I was working for that startup in Chicago. Economy got really bad in 08. A lot of people were getting laid off. I really wanted to get hired on because I thought they were going to go public, and if they went public, everybody has vested interest in the company, and everybody at the company would have become pretty wealthy, and then being a contract employee, I would have been left out of that. So I was kind of trying to leverage another job offer to make them hire me on. Wound up getting a job with Orbitz, the travel company. I really didn't want the job at Orbitz. I just wanted to use the job at Orbitz to leverage getting hired at this company. I wound up going to my boss and I said, hey, I got a job offer at Orbitz, and I kind of expected him to say, oh no, we don't want to lose you. Can we hire you? And instead he said, congratulations, good luck at Orbitz. So I lasted 3 days at Orbitz. I've told this story before. I raised my hand in a meeting. I said, I can't do this. This is way too corporate for me. I'm not going to be happy here. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy. I walked out. I remember taking the train home feeling like kind of a loser. Was laid off for a couple months. Played a lot of golf with a buddy of mine. We got a course by us where after 1 o'clock, like 18 in a cart is like, I don't know, $20 or something. So played a lot of golf that summer. Finally wound up landing a job. It wasn't a fantastic job. you know, having come out of college, I was expecting to be making a little bit more money, but the money wasn't horrible. I did have benefits, health insurance, dental insurance. I did have a 401k, so it could have been worse. It was a decent job. I didn't mind it. I worked with one other gentleman, and a lot of times I worked by myself. So I'm in an office by myself. There was a lot of downtime. Like out of an 8 or 9 hour day, I might actually have like 2 or 3 hours of real work to do, and the rest of the time was mine. So what did I do with that time? Like maybe the first 6 months of the first year, I just kind of wasted it. I wouldn't say I wasted it, but I read a lot of books. I started learning Spanish. You know, it was just kind of using the time to kind of improve myself and things like that. But at some point, I really liked the job. I didn't really want to leave the job, but at the same time, I realized there was really no upside in that job. There was nothing I could really get promoted to. There was no upward movement or upward mobility. And, you know, after a couple of years of being in that job, it kind of clicked with me. I was like, look, like, I don't want to go get another corporate job, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to be able to, like, get married and have kids and raise a family on this job's income. So that was kind of my pain point, right? And I was like, okay, that kind of forced me to try to come up with some other way to subsidize my income. And that's when I first started getting into like blogging and using Google AdSense and affiliate marketing. And eventually that actually I started my business. But I used to work Saturdays a lot at my job, and I hated working Saturdays. Like all my friends were out doing fun things, and I had to work on Saturdays. But I would work on Saturdays, and I'm like, well, as long as I'm stuck here for 8 or 9 hours with nothing to do, and Saturdays tended to be pretty slow as well. I'm like, as long as I'm stuck here, I may as well do something productive. So I started writing ebooks, and I could pump out a 40 to 60 page ebook and edit it and do the graphics and format it all in like an 8 hour workday. So every Saturday I worked, I'd pump out an ebook and get it up on Amazon KDP. This was before merch, so I wasn't doing merch, but you know, just doing all different types of affiliate marketing stuff. Once I got started in my business, I'd work on our blog, I'd work on social media and marketing and sales stuff. And eventually we got an 800 number, and I'd actually be, you know, as I'm working at my day job, I'd be fielding calls from my customers for my business as well. And this went on for like 3 years, and it finally got to the point where the business was making enough money that we could leave, and then also the business was starting to grow to the point where it couldn't really be something that I just do between, you know, 6 at night and 2 in the morning. Like I really needed to be available during the daytime hours. It was just getting too hard to do. I'd been, you know, burning a candle at both ends for like 2 years, like, you know, getting 2-3 hours of sleep a night, working my, you know, 8 or 10 hour day job, and then going home and staying up till 3 in the morning working on the business, and then getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then waking up at 6 in the morning having to process orders and do some more stuff so I could drop those orders off on my way to work. So that would be kind of my third job category, is kind of like a BS blow-off job that's not going to be too mentally taxing or take too much of your energy or mental focus, to where you're still going to have something left in the tank to start your business or work on your business when you get home. I hear a lot of people say things like, oh, well, I can't be an entrepreneur because I have a family to support and things like that. And if you cut back on your lifestyle and you don't need to pay a big car note and you don't have a giant mortgage to pay, you know, if you're able to cut back on your expenses, you probably can go get a job valeting cars or being a waiter or whatever else, and work on your day job during your off hour, and work on your side hustle, your business during your off hours, and do this other job that's not going to take up too much of your time or not be too mentally taxing. So those would really be kind of the 3 best jobs for entrepreneurs. Again, to recap, working for a startup so you see how a startup runs and you get your hands into everything. Number 2 was get a job where you're going to learn some specific skill. If you want to start a certain type of business, get a job in that industry. If you want to do, you know, or just get a job with any company that'll teach you some skill that can be used to forward your business. And then lastly, get a job that's more of a job and not a career, so your employer can't have as many demands and expectations of you, and that's going to leave you with more time and energy to kind of focus on your business when you get out of there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed. For those of you guys who have a side hustle, what's your day job and what's your side hustle? And those of you guys who are full-time entrepreneurs, what job did you have before becoming a full-time entrepreneur, and how did that job either help or hinder you in becoming an entrepreneur? Drop your comments in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.